So John, did I answer your question? Okay.
Give us an educated guess as to what you've said is your tolerance for those downticks in the uptrend.
Huh? Well,
The other direction, when you got an uptrend going, how much tolerance would you
we're going to
give?
do this on Sunday.
Oh.
Well, I'm going to give you a way to handle this on Sunday so that you can stay in this trade. If that's what you're asking me.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Another error. Define the risk, but won't take the loss. It turns into a bigger one. Okay. A perfect example. There's a money manager that many years ago that came to a workshop just like this one, and he went back home. And in fact, it's an example I even put in Trading in the Zone. And he was waiting for a belly trade for quite a while, as a matter of fact. And he had all his analysis done, and he was waiting for the market to get up to a certain point. He was going to sell, and so as someone who actually had a degree in probabilities, he said, okay, I think in probabilities, and therefore, as a good trader, I'm going to put my stop in the market. So he did what he needed to do, right? But does that mean just because he went through the motions of putting his stop in the market that he truly accepted the risk of the trade? See, if someone can put a stop in the market but still not be completely reconciled to losing the money. Then what did I say? What did it mean to accept something? To be completely reconciled, to be at peace. In other words, there aren't any competing and conflicting mental forces inside of his mental environment. So he put his stop in. The market started, moving against him, past his entry point, and he convinced himself at that point that he was going to get stopped out. He never would have gotten stopped out. He blew out of the trade. The market completely reversed, and it turned out to be a huge winner. He never got back in. And he called me up and said, hey, what's going on? I did what I was supposed to do. I put my stop in the market.
You said you adjusted it.
But yeah, but he took it out. I mean, he took it out because he never really accepted the risk.
Right. It was almost as if you were shocked when it didn't.
Right, exactly right. He was shocked because it didn't immediately reverse after he got in. That's what it really amounted to. And see, the thing is, here's where really, where we also have this potential to define and interpret market information in painful ways, is because we talk about emotional pain, all of us want our expectations fulfilled. And see, when you think about what an expectation is simply a belief projected into some future moment in the environment. Now think about what I just said. We can't expect something that we don't believe, or that we don't know about, put it that way. So what I'm saying is that an expectation is something that I either expect to see, hear, taste, smell, or touch in some future moment. And if the market shows up exactly the way I expect it to, now this is universal, by the way. This isn't just Mark, this is universal. If the market or the environment shows up exactly the way I expect it to, how do I feel? I could, depending on what the situation was. Yeah, satisfied, at least. At the very least, satisfied, right? A sense of well-being, correct? Is this not universal? And to whatever degree the environment does not show up the way I expect it to, how does that feel? Yeah, pain. Emotional. It has the potential to cause me to experience emotional pain. So when you really get right down to it, to think in probabilities, we have to learn how to manage our expectations. Our expectations have to be in line with the realities from the market's perspective. But before we get into that, let's just finish up these errors. Okay, hesitate as a result of an internal argument, get in too late or not at all. Jump the gun, anticipate an edge that never develops. Getting out of a winning trade too soon, leaving money on the table. Move a stop close to your entry point, get stopped out, and the market goes back in your favor. Let's see if I had another one. Okay. Anyway, these are all the, not all the errors that people can make, but all the typical errors that people make as a result of not thinking in probabilities. So what exactly does it mean to think in probabilities? It means believing at the very core of your identity that, 1, anything can happen. 2, every moment is unique. 3, there's a random distribution between wins and losses on any given set of variables that define an edge. And 4, you don't need to know what's going to happen next to create consistent results. That's it. Now think about those statements. Just for a moment. If I believed that anything could happen at any given moment, and I believe that every moment is unique. Now think about the word unique. What does that imply? Right. Now think about it. Every moment is unique. That means not like any other moment. Unique means not like any other moment. If I believe that this moment is not like any other moment, then what does my mind have the capability to associate that moment with?
Why put the trade on?
You can accept any outcome.
I can accept any outcome then. We say, why put the trade on? Because you've got an edge.
No, I was bearing not having an edge, if those two things.
Oh, no, yeah, you've got an edge. You've got an edge.
Okay.
You've defined your edge, but okay, this moment, there's a pattern, and this moment is like, let's say, we'll put it this way, just so you're not confused about this, that you've got an edge, and you're basically trying to develop a two-tiered belief system. One, where at the macro level, you know that patterns exist, but at the micro level, the patterns have a random distribution in terms of outcomes. So that I've got a pattern, and that as a result, that pattern has a potential to cause me to, let's say, by behaving in the appropriate ways, to enrich myself. But that the outcome to that pattern is unique in relationship to anything that happened in the past. So, but I was just talking about the concept of uniqueness itself. In other words, once I get that trade on, if I believe that each moment that it's on, that each moment is really unique in terms of what the market is telling me in that moment, then I'm going to keep my mind open to what it's telling me from its perspective. What I want to do, the whole objective, is to disassociate what's happening now with any other outcome that you had. To disassociate. Because the reality is there really is no relationship. That really is true. Our minds don't look at it that way, but it really is true. Same thing, there's a random distribution between wins and losses on any given set of variables that define an edge. Now if you think back to those errors, those kind of errors that we have the capability of making, or I don't need to know what's going to happen next to create consistent results or make money, if I have those 5 beliefs installed in my mental environment in a way where they're functional, and we're gonna get into what that means to be functional tomorrow, then I have basically eliminated my potential to define and interpret market information in a threatening way. If I've eliminated my potential to define and interpret market information in a threatening way, then my expectations will be neutral. And I will be in an objective state of mind, leaving myself open to whatever it is that I've perceived about the nature of market movement. Meaning that I'll be able to perceive all the patterns that I've learned about. back. Won't define the risk in advance of getting into a trade. If anything can happen and every moment is unique, am I going to get, if I believe that, am I going to not predefine my risk? I define the risk, but won't take the loss because it turns into a bigger one. The only way that I could not take my stop out of the market, let's say, or not execute a losing trade based on where let's say my predefined risk point would be because I have convinced myself that I know what's going to happen next. Is there any other way I could do that? I pull my stop or not execute a losing trade only because, one reason, every error that you're going to make, all these errors right here, every single one of them, we're going to go down the list, and any other ones that you could think of, are all going to be the result of thinking you know what's going to happen next. Thinking, assuming, or believing that you know what's going to happen next is what causes the errors. These 5 fundamental truths that I just gave you about the nature of the market break that. I shouldn't use the word break. It stops that whole process of thinking, assuming, or believing you know what's going to happen next. Because you've learned that you don't need to know what's going to happen next to make money. And you don't. Really, what is trading when you think about it? You break the act of trading down. It's really simple. What is it? Not just an educated guess, but what is it? An edge. Define the risk and execute the trade. It either works or it doesn't. That's all trading is. That's it. You don't need to know what's going to happen next to make money in this process. That isn't part of the process. The process is define an edge. How do we define an edge? A higher probability of one thing happening over another. Not what going to happen for sure. A higher probability of one thing happening over another. Define the risk. An educated guess. Or it can be precise. Whatever. Use a mechanical system. It doesn't matter. All I'm saying is that this is the process. Define an edge. Get on an edge. Define the risk. Execute the trade. That's trading. That's trading. There's nothing in that process that has anything to do with knowing what's going to happen next. When you get right down to it, it isn't any different than pulling the handle of a slot machine, only you've got the edge in your favor. The pattern either works or it doesn't. And you've got a way to take your profits, but otherwise that's going a little bit beyond this discussion at this moment. All I'm saying is that either works or it doesn't, you go to the next trade. Either works or it doesn't, you go to the next trade. Either works or it doesn't, you go to the next trade. If you're the kind of person who likes to use their intellect to determine what's going to happen next, you're going to have a problem being a trader. That answers your question too. That's someone who needs to know what's going to happen, who needs to have that kind of certainty that I don't act until I know what's going to happen next. They have problems being traders. You have to be really comfortable with uncertainty, that it doesn't matter. Because what do I need to know? First of all, I don't have to take responsibility for what the market does. I don't know what the market's going to do. It's a collection of individuals who are going to act in some particular way. I know the market's going to do something. I know it will do something. That's the expectation I have when I get into a trade. I think it's going to do something. What? I don't know. I don't have to know. I don't care. What do I know? What do I know? What do I have to know? Come on, what do I need to know?
Probability.
What?
You have an edge and there's a random outcome.
I need a edge, and what else do I need to know? What my risk is, right?
Your risk.
Yeah, that's it. That's all I need to know. And how I'm going to take my profits. That's what I need to know. That I know every time. If I don't know that every time, I don't get into a trade. As long as you get into trading with this idea that you've got to know what's going to happen next, you think you're going to know, you're always going to be susceptible to these errors. You're always going to be susceptible. I'm not saying you won't make money, because you know what? You can make money whether you make these errors or not. Remember, you don't have to know anything about the market. You don't have to know anything about yourself. You don't have to know anything about what we're talking about to make money. And you can make all these errors and still make money. Yes or no? Yes, you can. Will you make consistent money? No, you won't. That's a fact. So we're kind of getting to the point where we're getting an idea as to what we need to do here, right? Are we getting an idea of what we need to do? What do we need to do?
Stop trading.
Stop trading. I like that.
Get a job.
What do we need to do? Where do you think we're going? Where do you think we're going in the next 2 days on Saturday and Sunday? Where are we going? What are we doing?
Reinforcing these.
Go ahead, somebody. Go ahead, David. What?
Reinforcing these notions.
Notions? Okay. That's
That-
all right, David. It's
that
all right.
Concept. Mindsets.
I love it.
These well thought out ideas.
Yeah.
Not answering
Oh boy. Yeah, that's exactly
Thinking the probabilities. It's just
yeah, that's exactly what we're going to do. We are going to learn enough about the nature of beliefs and how they function in our mental environment so that we can effectively install these beliefs inside our brain at a functional level without any conflict. That's what we're going to learn in the next 2 days. Besides also learning how to identify and neutralize self-sabotaging beliefs and what to do about euphoria. This is what this workshop is all about, right here. When you've got those in your brain at a functional level, you will stop the errors. They cannot happen. And to the degree to which they do happen is just an indication as to how much work you need to do to get those in your brain at a functional level. And if you really want to, if your desire is strong enough to create consistent results, you'll do the work. If it's not strong enough, you won't. It's kind of that simple. And you don't have to feel obligated to do the work, like I said in the very beginning. It might take a long time to get to the point where you're really willing to do what you need to do to get those beliefs in your mental environment at a functional level. Because you may have other agendas about why you trade that are in conflict with these particular beliefs. There may be a lot of other reasons why you put on trades that have nothing to do with what it means to be consistent. Can anybody think of reasons why people trade that have nothing to do with being consistent? What might be some of those agendas that I'm talking about?
every feeling in the world.
Every feeling in the world? Okay, well, yeah, but anything specific.
Revenge.
What?
Revenge, getting back for a trade you lost.
Well, that's an agenda, sure. Revenge. That's not going to promote consistency, I don't think. That's pretty inconsistent with what it means to be consistent. Anything else?
Addictive behavior.
What?
Addictive behavior.
Okay, addicted. You could be addicted to random rewards, which I'm going to talk about in a minute. That would be an agenda that would be inconsistent with what it means to be consistent. Anything else?
Entertainment.
Entertainment. Perfect. Anything else?
Boredom.
Boredom. That's part of entertainment, but you know, you entertain yourself when you're bored. Don't some people like to be heroes? I work with a lot of traders who generate losses just so they can work their way out of a hole. Floor traders especially like doing that. They got sort of a cowboy mentality.
Self-destructiveness.
Yeah, right.
Be attention too. Some people
Right.
they have big losses. People gravitate to them saying, "Oh, sorry about that one."
Right. And you probably, did you get that on the tape? Okay, good. You're talking kind of low, so I didn't know if you picked it up.
Gotcha.
Masochism.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, there could be just any number of reasons, like you said. Just all the range is really great, but you know, that's why those agendas will be reasons why people won't do this kind of work. Not until you resolve that what you really want first and foremost is to create consistent results. And that's why I said in the very beginning, you know, a couple of hours ago, that it really has a lot to do with the way you want to live your life. But I will say that if you do the exercise I'm going to give you to install those beliefs, and if you do it diligently, and if you do it until you can do it without any internal conflict or argument, you will have succeeded in installing those beliefs. It does work. What?
I'm ready.
Good. But like I was going to say, it's a matter of wanting to do it. Now, the other thing I wanted to talk about in terms of how much time we got, by the way. Where are we? In terms of
49.
4 or 9. This will take a few minutes. Is this whole idea of being addicted to random rewards? That's really a powerful addiction, by the way. There are a number of studies that have been done, especially on primates, where if you start primates out, you know, with teaching them to do a task, and you reward the task, or you give them a reward for the task on a consistent schedule. So they do the task, they get the reward. They do the task, they get the reward. If you stop giving them the reward, what do you think happens?
Stop doing that.
They stop doing the task. But reward them on a completely random schedule. Okay? Completely random. And from their perspective now, they don't know that you've decided they're never going to get rewarded again. Okay? That's what you've done. You've decided you're never going to reward them again.
It's for me.
And what scientists have found is that it depends on the personality of the monkey, because some people are more, let's say, susceptible to addictive behavior than others. I think there's probably some sort of chemical makeup that has a lot to do with it. But there are some monkeys who will do the task indefinitely. They never get rewarded again, and they keep on doing it. And that's why there's some people that can get addicted to, you know, pulling the handle of a slot machine or not pushing a button. And you know, it has a lot to do with just that kind of euphoric high that we get when we get this unexpected surprise. And trading can, no matter how we handle our trades, whether we handle them very professionally or whether we handle them very haphazardly, we can always get that unexpected surprise. And that can be really addicting. But there are other problems too, and that's you know, one of the things that this is in Trading in the Zone where I kind of related this, where I was speaking at a conference, and I was talking to an editor from one of the major publishers in our industry, and he asked me, you know, he said, you know, why do people who are so accomplished, you know, in their lives, in their other part of their lives, in their professions, you know, can fail so miserably at trading? You know, what is it about trading where so many people are we all doing the wrong things? And and yet we're so, you know, and yet people get into it, and we're really attracted to it. And the way I answered them was that I said that, you know, people really are attracted to trading because what it really offers us is this unlimited freedom of creative expression. It's like it's an endeavor that is sort of outside all the normal social structure that we all grow up with. So for an example, when you consider that each of us are born into some sort of society, so a family, you know, a region, a state, a city, a country, whatever, and all these societies have rules about how we need to behave. And the problem is that when people can be born into these social structures where there's naturally a high degree of correspondence between the child and the rules that already exist. And then other kids can be born into the social structures where there's a very high degree of a lack of correspondence, meaning that whatever the kid is naturally attracted to, now you think about it, regardless of a child's, let's say, inherent behavior characteristics, there is one characteristic that is common to all children. And what is that characteristic?
Curiosity.
Curiosity. Curiosity is a characteristic that is common to all children. Leave children alone, and they will naturally explore their environment. Quite naturally. Now, are all children naturally attracted to the same things? So in other words, there is some sort of selective process going on, isn't there? In other words, out of all the things that are available in the environment for a child to be attracted to, children will naturally select. And this goes all the way back to, like, you know, when the kid's an infant. So there is some sort of force inside of us, inside of each of us, that naturally selects what we are attracted to in the environment out of the vast array of things that we can be attracted to. Some societies, meaning families, parents, whatever, support these natural attractions to some degree or another, and some do not. The problem is that when they're not supported, meaning when we're denied our ability or denied, let's say, the experience that we want as a result of these natural attractions, meaning that our parents are saying, no, you can't do that, or whatever, it builds up what I call these denied impulses. In other words, if you think about it, I think like our mind in some ways is like when we're attracted to something, it's like when a child, you know, take a child that's you know, they're curious, they're playing with something, and you take it away from them, and what do? They start crying. Why? They're not done experiencing, okay? It's like the desire for a certain type of experience creates like a vacuum in our mind. And that vacuum has to be filled with the experience that we desire. Deny it, in other words, as an outside force, deny that experience, and the child will naturally cry, and crying is a natural mechanism to let's say, put the child's mind back into balance. What scientists have also found is that tears are composed of negatively charged ions, and crying, I think, is simply a natural mechanism to put our minds back into balance, because what happens is that the lack of experience, I mean, the lack of the child being done with that experience didn't fill up the vacuum, and the crying reconciles the imbalance so that the child can be in a state of relative balance and go on with their lives. However, many children are not even allowed to cry, right? Especially males. And so therefore, as a result, we end up growing up with a buildup of these denied impulses. So that when we, as adults, when we get to the point where we discover trading, we find our sort of panacea of freedom, where we basically make all the rules. The only rule is that you have enough money to open up an account. Other than that, you decide when to get in, you decide how long to stay in, you decide when to get in, to get in with how much, and when to get out. Right? In each moment, the market does offer us as traders this opportunity to get into, to add to, detract from, or exit a position every moment. And we make all the rules. The problem is we have this natural, we grow up with a natural aversion to making rules because we've been trying to get away from them all of our lives. And that's one of the reasons why it's so difficult to even do the kind of exercise that I'm going to suggest on Sunday, is because it does require making and adhering to certain rules. And you probably will find there'll be a natural resistance to even doing the exercise regardless of the benefits that you perceive that you'll derive from it. And that's all right. And that's what I said before. It might take a long time to get to the point where you're ready to do this. Because it's a two-edged sword when you look at it. I mean, it's like here we've got freedom, but with freedom comes responsibility because or even or even not wanting to take responsibility because of the painful ways in which we learn about what we're responsible for, what we're not responsible for. But also with freedom comes the potential to damage ourselves. So we have an unlimited environment where we can do an unlimited amount of damage. The way to prevent damaging ourselves is to institute some regimen or some rules, but what we have are a backlog of denied impulses where we weren't allowed to express ourselves as we grew up, giving us a natural aversion to creating even our own rules. They're not somebody else's, they're our own. So it's like, hey, I found this panacea of freedom, unlimited, I can express myself in any particular way, possibility of unlimited riches, but I've got to create some rules, and not only do I have to create them, I have to learn to abide by them. Whoa, hey, no way. Which makes it easy to trade randomly. Because see, when you trade randomly, meaning when you're using virtually an unlimited number of variables to either enter or exit a trade, not a limited set, but in essence an unlimited set. What I mean by an unlimited set of variables? Okay, listening to the news, or listening to a friend, or maybe in combination with some technical advice or technical signal that you might get. Nothing that's systematic. Because see, by trading randomly, you can easily take credit for the trades that work and easily do what? Distance and separate yourself from the trades that didn't. Psychologically distance yourself. In other words, not take responsibility. Trading is the hardest easy money that you'll ever make. Trading is simple, and it can be easy. When you get the right mindset, it is easy. So it's almost 9 o'clock. As far as I'm concerned, we're done unless you guys have any questions. And also, before we split up, I just want to know that what are we going to do tomorrow? What do you think we're going to do? What are we going to get into and why? This is really important. What are we going to get into and why?
Mental vision of where we trade at night.
A what? A mental vision?
Well,
Okay.
what our
Okay.
mental state is now.
Okay.
And the inherent weaknesses and how we do that.
Okay. But can you say it more specifically?
Where we're screwing up now.
Okay, yeah, we know that. We already did that. We did that tonight. Okay, but what are we going to get into tomorrow? What specifically are we going to get into?
Installing beliefs.
Yeah, we're going to learn about the nature of beliefs. Because in essence, this is what this is all about, right? It's really all about what we believe. Because what controls our interpretation of information? Maybe I wasn't clear about that, and that's why I'm asking. And I'm glad I did. What controls our interpretation of information? Something has to. Or what we believe, exactly. That's without really saying that. That's in essence what I've been saying all along. When I said if I believe that anything can happen, then that will control my interpretation of information in a way that will cause me to act in a way that's consistent with what I believe. Something has to control the way we interpret information. We don't all interpret it the same way. There has to be some mechanism. So that's the mechanism that we're going to learn how to work with in a way so that we can interpret market information in a way that's consistent with the realities from the market's perspective. In other words, how do we interpret market information in a way where we keep our minds objective and neutral? Market gives me an edge, define the risk, I take the trade. Edge, define the risk, I take the trade. If you want trading to be more than that, then you probably don't want to be here. Because that's really all trading is. It ultimately becomes an exercise in just accumulating money based on your ability to objectively perceive an edge, define your risk, have a plan for taking profits. The trade either works or it doesn't. And you just keep on doing that over and over again.
How do you reconcile some of that with being an intuitive trader where you just, take the trades that come along?
You're way ahead. We'll get on that on Sunday. That's a good question, but where you just, this is basically just an introduction. So yeah, we're going to talk about trading intuitively. Remember I said I was going to put this into a context, trading mechanically, subjectively, and intuitively? We're definitely going to do that. But we definitely don't want to talk about that right now. That's way ahead of ourselves. Anything else? Does everybody have stereo headphones, stereo tape player and headphones? We're going to use them tomorrow. If not, you can buy a cheap one at a drugstore somewhere. Yes?
So we're bringing in the Walkman tomorrow?
Yeah, bringing in a Walkman tomorrow, right. Is everybody, yes? Everybody got that? Okay, well, tomorrow morning.
7:30?
7:30. Well, 7:30 there'll be like a continental breakfast.
What time does it start? 8?
We'll start around 8.
How do we need the tape players for?
I don't know yet. Well, I don't know.
Okay.
It'll be sometime, probably tomorrow afternoon sometime.
Is anyone coming in here tonight?
I think they're going to leave all the equipment. I think the
So we can
door's
leave our
going to be
books
locked.
here and-
Yeah, I would say you'd be able to leave everything you want because you can make money without any skills. So when you say make money, yeah, that's great. But really, consistent money is a byproduct of the kind of skills you've acquired. And unfortunately, I say unfortunately because all these skills are mental. They're not physical skills. They're not muscle memory skills. It's not like you can hire a tennis coach or hire a golf coach and show you how, to make the proper swing and just practice at it over and over and over again. And eventually you'll get it in your muscle memory and be able to swing the racket correctly or swing your club correctly. But still, even with that, a consistently good score in golf is a function of what? Yeah, what's going on in your brain? Because you can learn how to swing the club absolutely perfectly, but not do it every time. And the reason why you're not going to do it every time is because there are going to be distracting thoughts flowing through your brain, causing you to focus on something other than what you need to be focused on in that moment. And it's the same thing with trading. If you're focused on the money, then you're not focused on the skills you're trying to acquire. In other words, really what I want you to do is get to the point by Sunday afternoon and say to yourself, the only reason why I'm going to trade Monday morning, the only reason why I'm going to trade is to use my trading as a means or a vehicle to acquire certain mental skills. The skills that you know that will promote consistent results or that will result in a consistently rising equity curve or an equity curve that rises on a nice consistent basis. What did we learn yesterday? What sticks out in your mind? Beliefs, okay. But anything more specific?
You don't need to know what's going to happen next.
You don't need to know what's going to happen next. Good. However, that's a problem, isn't it? Why is that a problem? What is it about the way our minds are wired that caused that particular thought or notion, as Dave would say, to be a problem?
Associations.
Associations, exactly. Yeah. Not only do we want to know what's going to happen next, our minds, by the way that they're wired, our minds are wired in a way. They're hardwired like the motherboard of a computer. It doesn't mean we can't change it. It just means that at the moment, until you do change it, until you do something specific to cause your mind to think differently, it will automatically and without any conscious thought on our part, meaning we don't have to think about this happening, it will happen automatically. If the now moment, which we've learned is unique, and why do we know it's unique? When these patterns, in other words, what we want to do is technical analysis helps us identify patterns in group human behavior. The patterns repeat themselves over and over and over again. The outcomes to the patterns, however, do not. And the reason why we know that the outcomes to the patterns don't repeat themselves, at least in relationship to the last trade or the trade before, is because there are always different people involved in other words, in the outcome of the pattern. So the pattern can look exactly the same, it can feel exactly the same, it can measure exactly the same, and because of those similarities, our minds will automatically associate what's happening in this now moment with something that's in our brain as a memory, and cause us to think as a result of that we know what is going to happen next, based on our memories, not on what's happening in the market in that moment, or what the market's potential to move is in that moment, or what the market might be telling us in that moment. This is an automatic process. We don't have to think about this happening. It's automatic. Basically, what you have to do is render this process, this automatic mental process, kind of dysfunctional. Make it not function any longer. You can do that. The best traders, at some point, have. In one way or another. They may not have done it, systematically or methodically, the way that we're doing this now in this workshop. Usually it takes some catastrophic, emotionally catastrophic experiences for someone's mind to be wired differently. Meaning that one of the consistent themes that runs through every great trader's life is that every single one of them usually has lost one or more fortunes before they got to the point where they became consistent. It's these kind of catastrophic, and it doesn't have to happen to you, Greg. Okay, that doesn't have to happen. Okay, I know. That's what I'm saying. But, you probably read a lot of stories and thinking, okay, when's that going to happen to me? It doesn't have to happen. What?
It happens.
Anyway, go ahead. What were you going to say?
Yeah, I was just thinking, one of the thoughts to me, do you come with, the longer you're in, and a lot of us, most of us have transitioned from other fields.
Mm-hmm.
The longer you've been in other fields, you come with more baggage, takes you longer to, quote, get rid of your, this baggage because you're working in other industries, take you longer to cleanse your mind.
Well, it makes sense, doesn't it? I mean, think about it. I mean, let's put it this way. You take somebody who grows up in a trading family, whose father, let's say, trades, or his uncles or his brothers trade, and they know, they understand, let's say, the inherent nature of what trading is all about. And one of the first things they teach them is, let's say, especially in Chicago, where there are a lot of trading families, where there are generations of traders that trade on the floors of the futures exchanges. I mean, one of the first things they're going to teach them is that, let's learn how to cut our losses. First, let's learn how to scratch a trade, and then let's learn how to cut our losses. And so, the first thing, if you understand, is okay. If an inherent part of being a successful trader is first learning how to cut a loss, then it probably won't take that long for you to learn how to do it. And all the, let's say, all the thinking implications that go with doing that, as opposed to coming from a situation where you're coming from a profession where you're expected to know what's going to happen next. You're relied upon to know what's going to happen next. And even if you don't know what's going to happen next, you can say and act like you do, and people are going to believe you anyway. Right? That's right, because that's what people want. And if you're wrong, it doesn't matter, because you can intimidate people to make them act like you're right. And that's one of the reasons why, well, it's also another reason why it is so difficult to adapt to the trading environment. Because many of the skills that we learn to get what we want, in other words, to fulfill our expectations. Remember we talked last night about expectations? An expectation is what we believe projected into some moment, some future moment in the environment. And when the environment shows up the way we expect, we all feel good. So one of the ways that we've assured ourselves of having our expectations fulfilled is through our superior social skills. And what do I mean by superior social skills? Getting ourselves into a position where we can control other people. Whether they agree with us or not, whether their beliefs are in harmony with what we want or not, if we can rise above, let's say, them in a way that cause us to have control over their behavior, then we can assure ourselves of getting what we want. Most of the people that gravitate towards trading that don't start out that way when they're, let's say, in their early 20s or something, or out of college, are professionals that come from those kinds of superior social skills and find it extremely difficult to adapt to the trading environment because of it. Because the market just is going to do what it's going to do. And there isn't a damn thing you're going to do about it until you can trade at a level that, you can basically cause prices to move in your direction. And even then, it's going to be difficult to make it happen for very long. And so the only thing you're going to find you have control over is the way you think. That's the only thing you're going to have control over. You can control the way you think. You can control how you perceive information. You can control, I'm going to say it again, you can control how you perceive information. But it's a completely different process. Now you're working inside yourself instead of working out there.
Mark, can you repeat that? You can control.
You can control the way you perceive information. And that's really what this workshop is all about. That's why we're going to talk about the nature of beliefs, because there is a mechanism by which we interpret environmental information. There has to be. If you look at the nature of the environment and the ways that it can express itself, the environment can express itself in a virtually infinite combination of ways. And yet we don't perceive all those ways in any given moment. And not only do we not perceive all the different ways that the environment can express itself, we can be standing virtually in the same position and looking at the same event and interpret it in completely different ways. Now, why is that possible? How is that possible? How can two people interpret the same event in different ways? Completely different ways. And we've all been in these situations. It's the source of many of our most violent arguments. That's right, different beliefs. In other words, we're perceiving the situation from different beliefs, different perspective. In other words, different beliefs are operating on our perception of information in a way where the information is interpreted in a way that's consistent with the beliefs we're operating out of in that moment. So when I say we can control how we perceive information, we control that process by changing the beliefs we're operating out of. We operate out of different beliefs, and we're going to perceive the information differently. Because the problem is this association mechanism that I've been referring to causes us to think that we know what's going to happen next. In other words, if the moment is similar, I've got a pattern. Not only is it similar, it's virtually identical to the last one that showed up 5 minutes ago or 5 days ago or 2 hours ago. 2 hours ago, it was a winning trade. Now, if I let this association mechanism, influence the way that I think or how I see things, I'm automatically going to think that I know what's going to happen next. Automatically, without any conscious thought about it. And as a result of thinking that I know what's going to happen next, I will behave in a way that's consistent with what I think. And that behavior might, in fact, be a trading error. Remember the errors we put up yesterday? That is a list of all the things we can do, but those are the major things that we do that cause us to, what? Detract from our ability to create consistent results. So I may hesitate. I might not predefine my risk. I might not end up taking profits. There's any number of things I could end up doing because I think I know what's going to happen next. When the reality is, what's the reality? I don't know. For me to know what's going to happen next, really, now think about this. For me to know what's going to happen next, I would literally have to be able to read the minds of everyone who's participating and everyone who has the potential to participate. So that I would know how when they cast their vote by putting on a trade, you might say, you know, how that's going to influence direction overall.
The name of the game is educating.
Yeah, that's all it really is. It's just a guess. Whenever you're putting on a trade, it's just a guess. And the more you look at it that way, the less significance you'll put on any particular trade in a way by just knowing that really what you're doing is just kind of pulling the handle of a slot machine, but you've got the odds in your favor. You're the house. Because of technical analysis, you're the house. But only if you can execute properly every single time. That is the key. Execution without errors. Every error other than self-sabotaging beliefs, every error you're going to make as a trader will be the result of thinking that you know what's going to happen next. Every single error. And the problem is, sometimes you will. Sometimes you will think you know what's going to happen next, and it will come true. And sometimes it'll be 2 times in a row. And sometimes it'll be 3 times in a row. But I guarantee you, guaranteed, there's that trade out there with your number on it that's going to cause a catastrophic loss if you continue to think that you know what's going to happen next. Because, again, I'm going to repeat, you can make money whether you don't make these errors or whether you do make these errors. You can make these errors and still find yourself in a winning trade. But if you want to create consistent results and not inflict psychological damage on yourself, then you're going to have to take your mind through a process that let's say, renders this association mechanism dysfunctional. Or non-functional, not dysfunctional, but non-functional. You're going to have to keep your mind focused in the now moment, meaning what's the market telling me now about its potential to move in any particular direction based on the pattern that it's displaying in this moment. Not based on my memory of the previous trade or the one before that or the one before that, because this moment is truly unique. It may end up being exactly the same. But if you allow yourself to think that, you are putting yourself in a position where you have the potential to make errors. So are we kind of together about where we need to go with this? Where do we need to go? What do we need to learn right now?
How to get rid of all the old thinking.
How to get rid of all the old thinking.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you can make room for the educated guess.
Right, so you're just making educated guesses. And where would you say, kind of be more specific about about when you say get rid of all the old thinking? In other words, look at it this way. You guys, you're sitting here, and you have this opportunity, let's say, to expose yourself to certain, let's say, categories or kinds of information. But what you end up exposing yourself to really is a function of your desire. Now think about this. It's really a function of your desire. What do you want to learn right now?
Change your
What do you
beliefs.
want to learn? Tell me what you want to learn.
How to change my beliefs.
Okay, you want to learn how to change your beliefs. Great. Do you want to learn that, John?
No,
No? Okay, so there you go. What do you want to learn?
I want to know it's all right to take a loss, rather than fearing it.
Okay, and what do you think you have to do to learn that?
I mean, some of it's mechanical, some of it's knowledge-based, but it gets back to that I know what Margaret's going to do next, and so I just sit there.
And so what do you think you're going to have to do to get to the point where
Well,
you
we
know
go
it's
back
all
to
right to
change-
take a loss?
We go back to changing beliefs then.
Oh, okay. Changing beliefs. Okay, good. Anybody else? What do you want to learn, Louis?
Well, not back to comment earlier, I don't think you can purge your mind of previous process. I think what we have to do is to create switching points that make us take a different track rather than the old track.
Exactly.
That's what
Yeah, because one of the things we're going to learn as we start discussing the nature of beliefs is that I don't think it's even possible to change a belief.
It's hard if you said a lot of the traders you talk to have blown up. I've been trading for 4 years, and I've blown up twice, big, and you make a lot, then you blow it up, then you make a lot, then you blow it up. And I think there's a certain point you reach where the pain is so strong that you do change your beliefs, and that it does get rewired.
Right.
In my previous career, I spent the whole time controlling and negotiating. I always liked it. When I was trading 2 years ago, I'd pick the biggest, baddest stock out there, and I'd reverse it. Because I wanted to negotiate with that stock. And the more it went up, the more I'd put on, because damn it, I'm going to beat it. And because that was what I did in my previous career. And eventually you get to such a level where the pain just, and it's not even just not even just financial. It's embarrassing because you got other traders saying, what the hell are you doing?
Right.
It's that kind of stuff. And then you hit that point, and I think that's when you can finally switch and realize what you're talking about. But prior to that, it's hard.
Yeah.
Because you have to trust Mark.
Don't you get to a point of replacement though? I mean, isn't some of that when you're taking a loss, you're supposed to put yourself in a mental environment where if you were out of the trade, what the reward of that is?
I'm not sure if I know what you're getting at. When you say the word replacement, you're right. See, when I said you're using the words, change a belief, what we're going to learn in terms of at least the way I look at it is that I don't think you can actually change the structure of a belief that once it exists, it'll be in our minds till the day we die. But what we can do is draw the energy out of it. What we're going to learn about the nature of beliefs is that they're basically energy structures. And that you can draw the energy out of a belief that let's say we find is non-functional or dysfunctional, or not non-functional, but it doesn't serve us. In other words, there are ways that it causes us to look at information and behave that doesn't serve our purposes. It doesn't serve our desires. And so what we can do is we can draw the energy out and replace it with another belief that we put energy into. But see, well, anyway, I'm going to get to that stuff later. But yeah, that's what you're doing is, so when you talk about replacement, so you can go ahead and now finish what you were saying.
I think that old track's always there, but you just indelibly superimpose the new track, and the more you do it, the more apt you are to make a mistake. But you're always going to be possibly
yeah,
on the wrong
no,
track.
but see, no, Louis, no, here's the thing. The old track is always there, okay? However, what you're going to learn how to do today and tomorrow is take the energy out of the old track so that it doesn't have any potential. So that there literally is no more potential for you to behave in that way. Or for you to see or perceive in a way that's consistent with that belief. That's how you know you've really done the work, is when your thoughts are never drawn back to, or you don't feel compelled to behave in that old way. What's that?
Santa Claus belief.
Yeah, exactly. Right. I mean, and see, yeah, in the disciplined trader, is it the disciplined trader or trading in the zone? I'm not sure which. Trading in the zone? Okay. Well, I don't know. Anyway, look at it this way. That's a perfect example. I mean, I'm sort of getting ahead of myself a little bit, but it's a perfect example. If you can draw the energy out of one belief, if it's possible to do it with just one, it's possible to do it with any. And a perfect example is, I grew up believing in Santa Claus. Now, do I believe in Santa Claus now? What? Yeah, we want to trade, right. I wish. Now, listen. Can you say that I believe in Santa Claus now? We don't know you. You don't know me. You know. Well, I don't. Okay, but here, but that's a good answer. But here's what's really important about this, is that I would, in the course of my conversation with you, and the words that I would use, I would actually use words that don't really represent what's going on, just because that's the way we talk. So I would say, no, I don't believe in Santa Claus. But what we're going to learn in a little bit, as a matter of fact, when we get started with this, is that actually what I'm saying to you is that my belief in Santa Claus still exists in my mental system. There is a belief in my mental system that says Santa Claus exists. But I have another belief in my mental system that says that Santa Claus doesn't exist. It's a matter of which has the most energy. When I was 5 years old, the belief in Santa Claus had all the energy, and I didn't think any other possibilities existed. So therefore, if somehow or another I could transport myself back to that 5-year-old mentality, and somebody knocked on the door and said, Santa Claus, or all of us, for example, who grew up with that belief, and said, Santa Claus is out in the lobby, how would that belief act on my perception of that information and my behavior? What would happen? I would sprint to the lobby. My perception of the information would be that it's true, it's real, and the energy in that belief would cause me act on my behavior in a way where I would be jumping over you guys to get out in the lobby.
I don't think so. I think our mind just changed from being the mode to get fest
What's that?
to suddenly realizing you're in a give fest.
Yeah.
You are Santa Claus. If you have to produce.
So
who's that fool down the line?
yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. So now, if someone knocked on the door and said Santa Claus is in the lobby, how would I behave? How would I perceive the information?
Yeah, right.
It would be irrelevant to me. And as a result of it being irrelevant, how, of me interpreting that information as irrelevant, how would it act on my behavior? I would just keep on standing here. I wouldn't change it. Now, these two beliefs are contradictory beliefs. They're two contradictory concepts that exist in my mental environment side by side, let's say. But from a functional perspective, there's no conflict. You see, from a functional perspective, I don't have a conflict at all because one has all the energy, the other one has virtually no energy at all. That's what we're going to end up doing. We're going to end up identifying those dysfunctional beliefs, in other words, that cause us to perceive market information in what? What do we want to do? We want to perceive market information or a lack of perceiving it as threatening, right? Remember the up and down ticks? The up and down ticks, they're neutral, aren't they? From the market's perspective, it's just neutral information that form into patterns. The patterns give us an indication there's a higher probability of one thing happening over another. What causes us to perceive these up and down ticks in something other than a neutral frame of mind? Our fears are one, but basically our interpretations, right? That tap us into our fears. Our interpretations that tap us into our fears.
Say again.
What causes us to perceive these up and down ticks as anything other than neutral? Our interpretations that tap us into our fears. Here, I'm long this market. The market is giving me exactly what I want. I get 2 or 3 down ticks in a row. My interpretation taps me into my fear that the market's going to take my money away. Now, these ticks are no longer neutral. So far, these ticks haven't given me any indication at all that, let's say, whatever trend this is forming has been violated. or even based on my rules that say, I've got to let this, play itself out to tell me, what the possibilities are. Am I willing to accept the risk of finding out? Well, obviously, if I'm ready to jump out of this trade right here, then I have really not accepted the risk. But the point that I'm making is that now the downticks take on something other than a neutral, let's say, valence. Now they're either overly negative, or maybe even overly positive. How many of us have been in winning trades that think that, it's never going to end? How does that happen? Even after the market has given us ample information to tell us that the trade is over with, okay? Here, you get so enthralled over the fact that the market's going up, you forget about the fact you've got significant reference points with this high, this high, this high. The market gives you an isolated high, starts reversing, and you know what? You didn't take any profits. You're down here at your original entry point. Next thing you know, you're losing money on the damn thing. Didn't take a dime out of it. And why? Because the neutral, in other words, from the market's perspective, these neutral up and down ticks took on an overly positive significance in your mind. Based on your interpretation. So if we want to create consistent results, we're going to have to, let's say, be able to trade from a carefree, meaning lack of fear, a noticeable absence of fear, carefree, objective state of mind. And what do I mean by objective? Remember we talked about that yesterday too. We're going to go over it again, but just what do I mean by objective? Do you remember the example I gave you yesterday? Anybody tell me? Having access to everything you've learned? Because when you're operating out of a state of fear, what happens? Do you remember the principle? What's it? Okay, go ahead, Jeff. What?
You limit the information that you can.
Yeah, fear does what? It narrows your focus of attention, right?
To what you fear the most.
Right. Narrows your focus of attention. Now, the interesting part about in our normal daily lives, if we're afraid of something, our focus of attention will narrow to the point where we're focused exactly on what we're afraid of. But in the market, since the market, it's a little bit different in the markets because the markets give us both upticks and downticks. And if I'm afraid of one of those, if I'm afraid of the downticks for whatever because I'm long, then in this case, what fear does is cause me to place an inordinate amount of significance on the upticks. So in essence, what I'm doing is avoiding the significance of the downticks. My mind will do that for me automatically. I don't have to think about this. This is an unconscious mechanism. It isn't any different than the example I gave you yesterday. This is a hot burner. I accidentally put my hand on it. My hand comes off. I don't have to, there's no internal arguments. I don't have to think about this. I don't have to make a decision about it. It happens automatically because of the way our minds are wired. So what we're doing is we're becoming conscious of these mechanisms so that we can do something to compensate for them. If it is our desire to create consistent results or fulfill the potential that we know exists in the market. In other words, to become a, let's say, greater version of who we are, because that's in essence what we're doing. By accumulating more money based on our trading, aren't we becoming greater and greater versions of ourselves? Aren't we becoming more and more of who we once were? Because as you accumulate more money, what are you going to do with it? You might hoard it, but then again, you might spend it. And as you spend it, you're just, you're creating something different. You're creating something other than who you once were, based on the ways you can express yourself that you may not have been able to express yourself in those particular ways because you didn't have the amount of money that you have now.
Is there something about this protection, and maybe it's just me, but, all right, you're up a quarter.
Chances are not,
Yeah,
John.
in that example there, you're up a quarter.
What's that? What?
There seems to be, in my mind, you protect the money you made. It seems to be like something precious versus, you're down and I'll take a nickel or a dime, loss and get out of the trade. But something about it already, I've got a quarter already on this trade. It's this, I hate to ever come out and say, if I'm up a quarter, let's say I get out at 15 cents as an example because it falls through. And many times I get out of the trade because of that. Does that feed into your fear issue?
Well,
it seems more inordinate for me.
What's that? It seems.
I get it. I'm just saying that if I'm up on this trade, I try to protect it more, and I miss out on the bigger trades as a result of it. It seems like.
Yeah, that's really hard. It's really hard to learn how to take profits. Out of all the skills that you're going to learn, I mean, one of the most difficult is really learning how to take profits. But I'm going to give you a way to do that. I'm going to give you a mechanism on Sunday that'll do it for you automatically. So you don't have to worry about it. You don't have to really think about it in the way that you're thinking about it now. And it's simple and it's easy. It's an easy. It's just basically learning how to scale out. But as much sense as it makes, it always amazes me how resistant people are to doing it. Just divide your position up into fractions and start scaling out as the market gives you money. I give myself money as the market makes it available. And then if it comes back, or it comes back to your entry point even, it's like you still have a fraction of your position on, and you can let it see if it's going to just bounce right back off support again and go right back up or go through it, and then maybe might take a small loss on the last portion of it. But then again, since you don't know how far it's ever going to go when you get into a position, you want to be able to set your whole profit-taking regimen up in a way where you can take maximum advantage of whatever the move is, whatever the move ends up being.
I think I had a little breakthrough. I got out here that I had wrote out, on the plane yesterday what I wanted out of this. One is I wanted to be more patient. And two is I wanted to basically let go of the fear, so that when I'm buying it on the bid as it comes in your example, that when I buy it I don't just immediately bail out when it goes down another tick. And I think what I got was, what you said was, I didn't accept the risk of the trade in the beginning.
Right.
So it's basically if you just accept the risk of the trade, I can be more patient and I can allow it to jiggle against me or hold it and go from there with it.
Right.
And so that was my breakthrough.
And what does it mean to accept the risk? What exactly does that mean, Greg?
I guess it means to just adhere to my stop loss, and that's okay.
The part that I was looking for was that's okay. What does it mean to accept a risk? What does it mean to accept anything?
I'm not sure I understand.
Well, that's why we're doing this. Okay? What do you think it means to accept anything? What are the implications of acceptance? Whether it's in the market or anything else in your life. What are the implications?
Understanding.
Okay, understanding.
Realizing you made a mistake.
Well,
It's predefined that you accept that as just.
no, I'm not. I'm doing more generic, not the market. What does it mean to accept anything?
Whatever happens, you're
It's okay.
comfortable with it.
There you go. When I said okay, whatever happens, you're comfortable. Meaning you're at peace with whatever happens. In other words, the situation is completely reconciled in your mind. if you're going to risk a penny on that trade or risk a dime or whatever you're going to risk, that you have genuinely accepted. Genuinely meaning you're at peace with the fact that you're willing to spend the money.
Right.
And there's no internal conflict. So just, although we're getting way ahead of ourselves, but we're in this moment right now for Greg, okay? That's all right. It just, so so what would it, Greg, what would it mean if you're not at peace with it?
I guess if I'm not at peace with it, I got fear.
And then what are you
It's
going to
gonna
do?
cause me more harm.
Okay, what are you going to do then? You're not at, you see, so now you've realized, now you're looking at this chart, you say, okay, I've got to risk a dime. That's what the market's telling you, right? Based on the pattern.
Yeah.
Based on your previous experience at this pattern, say, this pattern warrants risking a dime to find out if it's going to work, right? But now you're learning to monitor yourself and realize that, you know, you're uncomfortable with that dime. You're not at peace with it. It's not reconciled. There's conflict. And you can know that in many, many different ways. One would be just the amount of hesitation you might have to, you know, to hit your keyboard or pick up the phone. Now, what are you going to do?
What am I gonna do? I gotta find some way to deal with the fear. I gotta do a little more breathing. I guess I gotta acknowledge that the fear is there, and then reevaluate. Do I want the risk? Do I want the
Okay,
time?
good. Now, and what might the solution be?
Then my solution is say, yeah, okay, I can live with that, and go on.
What if you really? What if you're just kidding yourself? What if you're lying to yourself? Because if you're uncomfortable in the first place, chances are, just by you saying, okay, I can live with this, isn't going to do it. It may, but chances are it might not. What would really do it? What would really get you comfortable?
I guess just trusting myself that I know that if it goes down the dime,
No.
No?
No. What's going to get you comfortable?
Only if it goes in my way. I don't know.
No, if you take another risk, something that you are comfortable with.
Yeah, scale back until you are comfortable. So if you're trading 1,000 shares, trade 500. And if you're not comfortable with 500, trade 200. If you're not comfortable with 2, trade 100.
I don't like that answer.
Or don't put the trade on.
Yeah, or don't put the trade on.
Or give it more.
The best thing would be, in that case, is just don't put the trade on. If you can't get comfortable with the risk, where you're completely reconciled, then either don't put the trade on or scale back
Okay.
until you are comfortable. Until you make it a carefree situation. You know, at 1,000 shares, risking a dime, you know, I mean, that's only $100. I mean, that's not, realistically, we're not, these numbers are probably not what you do. But at 1,000 shares, risking a dime, it's, you're uncomfortable. And you can't get comfortable. In other words, you're being honest with yourself, and you can't get to that really carefree space. And so if you scale back to, let's say, 750 or 500 shares, and it becomes virtually meaningless to you, like, that's probably why you don't like it, because it's virtually meaningless. But at least you're in a carefree state of mind, and you're participating, and you are participating.
It's also a good way to reinforce whether or not your idea will play out.
Exactly. What difference should it make, Ray? Whether you're trading 500 or 1,000 or 10,000, really?
Doesn't.
Because if you're really thinking about what skills I need to acquire and trading properly, it shouldn't make any difference at all.
Right.
So scale back until it's carefree, until it's meaningless. Because that's exactly what it has to be. Because when it's meaningless, then you've eliminated your potential to define and interpret those up and down ticks in anything other than a neutral way. Because why? Because you don't care. You don't give a shit. Yeah, good. So that does make sense to you? No? You don't like it? Oh well.
I guess, I want to argue with you. I guess because I've been, scaling back, I've been in trades where you got 100 shares and you're scared, and been in trades where you got 5,000 shares and you're scared. And
I can see I can completely agree with you. You got 100 shares and you're scared because you don't trust the pattern, even though you're only trading 100 shares. You're in a 5,000 shares because you're scared because 5,000 shares you're risking too much in relationship to the amount of equity that you have. In any case, you're still, you're well, let's put it this way, you still have the potential to make trading errors because you're afraid. Now, I'm not saying none of these trades are going to work out. Any one of them could work.
well, I think maybe what it is because I've been burned for 10 points in a minute and a half, and you can't get out of 100 shares. So,
And
you know,
And would that be in a market that is in a stock that's pretty liquid or illiquid?
that's good liquid.
Oh, yeah, that's right, trading illiquid stocks.
Yeah, but you
Okay.
said it was liquid. It's an IPO.
Glad that you didn't have 1,000 shares.
Well,
I understand what you just say a minute ago, imply that you should be in a carefree state. If you're not, you don't get out.
That's right, exactly.
So there's no in between.
That's right.
The rigid
Or scare. Or let's put it this way: if there is an in between, you're aware of it, and you're constantly monitoring yourself. But we're getting way ahead of ourselves right here. We really are.
Yeah, one
So,
question.
what?
You could start off being in a carefree state of mind, right?
Yeah.
Let's say you've actually got to that point where
Okay.
you trade, and you can
Right.
handle the risk, it's predefined, you accept it. Then something happens like, as this John
Greg.
Greg says, and all of a sudden, the market really moves against you, and you can't get out. How do you stay carefree under those circumstances? I mean, you're really like taking a beating.
You may not.
And
You
didn't
may
really do
not
anything
be.
wrong.
I'm not saying you. First of all, Drake, you can't. When you say how do I stay carefree, it's not a matter of how do I do it in the moment because it'd be extremely difficult. In most cases, probably impossible. What you do is you set up the circumstances in your mind in advance. So when these situations occur, they don't affect you in the way that they used to. In other words, it's the kind of training that you go through. So, for an example, this isn't any different than pilots or people in the military or people that their profession is inherently dangerous, where they have to do rescue missions or something like that. What they do is they train over and over and over again, so that what would be catastrophic to a normal person is just everyday circumstances to them.
He's handling that.
Yeah, so you can handle it from a relatively, if not completely carefree state of mind, confident, carefree state of mind. It's a matter of how much training and work you want to go through to get yourself to the point where a circumstance like that wouldn't affect you. It's possible, Jake. It really is. It's just a matter of how much effort you want to put into it.
If you believe your edge is, if you believe you have an edge too, then the vacuum, sometime in the future, is going to go the other way.
That's right. You'll
All
get
balances
vacuums in
out
your
anyway.
favor too. Right, exactly. You will. You'll get vacuums in your favor. That's right.
But I think the downside of what you're saying is you control the amount of capital you risk in that particular trade. Because my partner's in a trade and he's been sitting 4 weeks and it's still closed. So
Wait. Say this again. Your partner what?
he was in a trade where the stock ceased trading. Well, the probability is if they had some sort of violation of the policy or whatever, and he probably will lose all of it. So you've got
Right.
to enter any trade with the idea that
Right.
can happen.
That's right. Exactly. Like the
You can't
exercise.
control it.
That's right. But the exercise that we're going to set up tomorrow, like the trading in 20 trade sample sizes, we've got to set this up in a way where the amount of money that you would need to risk to do this exercise is equivalent to losing on all 20 trades. If you took 20 losses in a row. You've got to be able to accept the risk and set it up in a way where you can accept the financial value, dollar value of losing 20 trades in a row. The likelihood of that happening is very remote, but it could happen.
At least from my perspective, I get caught in these vacuums because I'm trying to guess the market. I'm trying to find the bottom, and then the market. I know this is the bottom, and I'm fishing for it, and it just the market just starts screeching down further, and I'm caught in it. So if I did the quote unquote risk analysis, and I didn't have that belief that I knew what the market's gonna happen, I wouldn't get into these, most of those fixes anyway, just personally.
You also try to find tops?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Okay.
That's where you get in that's when the market rolls and you get caught in it, you know, for the most part.
How are we doing time-wise? What time is it?
So,
Almost 9.
you know, it's 10 to 9.
Okay, so again, I'm gonna ask you guys, where are we going with this and why do we need to go there?
It goes back to changing your perception of your beliefs, or I guess rewiring your beliefs. And the reason we need to go there is you're not going to achieve what you truly want to until you address that.
Okay.
So we can learn to think in probabilities.
Right, so we learn to think of probability, right. Because that is the nature of the way the market moves, right? See, when we're dealing with people, interacting with our family and our friends, you know, based on what they believe and what we've learned about the nature of the way they express themselves, we can pretty much count on what they're going to do and under what circumstances they're going to do it. And when they deviate in their behavior, we can chastise them for it, can't we? Right? And we can, and you know, like sort of like a rubber band, and snap them right back if that's what we, you know, if that's what we think is appropriate, and we're inclined to think that way. But with the markets, it's different. The markets really do, I mean, really, everything exists from a probabilistic perspective when you get right down to it, but the markets for sure. The markets are the most immediate environment where there is no doubt that everything is really probable. And all we're really learning to do is get our thinking to conform with or be in harmony with the way the markets exist. That's really all we're doing here. We're taking these conscious steps to train our minds to be in harmony with the way the market exists from its perspective. So that when we're in harmony with it, we can flow with it. And we can better able to take advantage of the opportunities that the market is constantly making available in every time frame. That's all we're doing here. We're adapting the way we think to conform with the market environment. Because we know that the way we think now doesn't work real well. That doesn't mean we can't have winning trades. It doesn't mean that we can't even create, you know, some level of consistent results even. But it just depends on what your goals are, what your desires are. How much do you want to create for yourself? Because at some point you're going to find that if you don't think objectively, and if you are trading with fears, it's all going to catch up with you. And then it starts to get really frustrating, or exasperating, or, you know, the most exasperating thing that you could think of in terms of the way it's affecting your life. Because until you understand the nature of beliefs and how they operate on our perception of information and behavior, all of it seems mysterious. It's like, oh, I don't get it. I don't get why I can't take advantage of something that is readily available right now, in this moment, and the next moment, and the next, and the next. It's all right there. I can see it. The opportunities exist. The patterns flow by all the time. Why can't I give this to myself on a consistent basis? It seems kind of mysterious, right? Well, it ain't going to be mysterious after Sunday afternoon. You'll know what you need to do. I guarantee you that. You will know what you need to do. Whether you do it or not will depend on the level of your desire. Just like anything else. When you make up your mind to do something, what happens? That's right. when you really, genuinely make up your mind. Now, what does that mean when I say make up your mind? Not necessarily. Just, when you make up your mind, basically, the implications are you make up your mind with so much energy, with so much conviction, that you have literally wiped away all the other conflicts. Now think about what I just said. When we make up our minds about something, that's what that implies. When we make up our minds about something, we're doing it with so much energy and so much conviction that we literally, I'm going to use the word erase, but that's really not what happens. We literally, let's say, take all the other conflicting energy that may exist in our mind and neutralize it so that we can now step into that experience without any conflict, without any problems. Because when there is no conflict, when we are acting out of a belief, an unconflicted belief, do we have any problems behaving? Do we have any problems doing exactly what we need to do? So if my desire is to step here, my desire and my belief and my ability to do so are in complete harmony, there's a complete level of correspondence, and therefore I can take that step. Makes sense, right? My desire and my belief are in complete harmony with one another. There's a 100% correspondence. If my desire is to step there, but I have conflicts about what it means to step there, well, what's going to happen? I might not be able to step at all. I might only be able to take a half step or a quarter step and think to myself, well, there's nothing there. There's nothing there. What's stopping me? Why can't I go? Why can't I do the rest of it? Because mental energy is tangible. See, there might not be anything physically impeding my progress. There might not be anything in the environment that says I can't do that. And that's why trading is so frustrating, because there's nothing in the environment stopping us. There isn't anybody saying no, 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 like when we were kids. Or in a corporate environment where you have ideas. And there's somebody above you saying, no, 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 that won't work. Or that's ridiculous. That doesn't make any sense. I don't like it. See, there's none of that. And now we have direct access to the markets electronically. We don't even have to pick up phones anymore. We don't even have to listen to our broker anymore. Say, oh, you really want to do that? Are you sure? It's point and click, point and click. Instantaneous feedback, instantaneous fills. Couldn't be better than that. It couldn't be easier.
Can you repeat something, Mark? You said whenever you step into something with 100% conviction, you erase.
Oh, you erase all the conflicts.
All conflict.
When you make up your mind, making up your mind implies that you're doing with so much energy and so much conviction that you're basically erasing any other conflicting energy that's inside of you. See, so there's nothing in the environment stopping us. That's what makes it so mysterious. Because if you don't understand how beliefs function, then it will be like just doesn't make any sense. So that's why we're going to learn about beliefs. Or I'll give you another example. It would be who has seen situations where scientists have done experiments with fish, for an example. They'll take a fish tank that's like this big, put a piece of glass in half the tank, so that the fish that are in this half of the tank, there's nothing over in this half, and they leave the glass in there long enough, and they take the glass out. Now there's no barrier, but the fish will stay in that half of the tank. Same thing with electronic dog collars. Beliefs are tangible. That's what we're going to learn. Beliefs are tangible. They're real. So for an example, you put an electronic dog collar on a dog because you want them to stay in a perimeter, what you do is you bury a wire with a radio transmitter on the collar so that every time the dog gets near the perimeter, and usually do it with some visual things too to reinforce it, they'll start getting electric shocks. And the closer they get to the perimeter, the more intense the electric shocks get. You don't have to do this very long, and you can turn the system off, even take the collar off, and the dog will stay in the perimeter. And also, I think conceivably, feel the electric shocks. That's why they stay in the perimeter. See, there isn't anything physical causing the shocks anymore. It's all inside their mind. I know people who have to literally have done this, and have to pick up their dog and carry him beyond the perimeter to put him in the car. It doesn't work any different with people. It's exactly the same. Once we acquire a belief about something, that belief will limit the way we perceive information or how we behave in a way that's consistent with the belief, regardless of what other opportunities or potentials exist beyond that belief. And they're real. So let's take a break. And we'll. Okay, so we're ready, right? Go ahead, Greg.
I have a question.
Greg has a question. Okay, good.
Not the breakthrough. And I believe this too.
Well, certainly don't tell me if you don't believe it. So.
You say you got to develop this carefree attitude, and I agree that you have to be flexible. Sometimes I've seen this in other people, and even with my own trading. Sometimes you don't get a feel until you have a little pilot position.
Tell a little what? Pilot?
You buy 100 shares to get a feel, is it going up or is it going down?
Oh, okay.
Just to get the feel.
Sure.
Somehow.
Probing the market in a way.
In a way,
Yeah.
but it also gives you a different connection with it because you can feel you're long and the thing's going down and it's doing something to your mental state that, ooh, hey, I better be flipping this thing out, and it's really a sale, not long. So how do you I've seen people, arbitrarily, they come back from lunch and they just immediately, within 3 minutes, put on a position because they want to get the feel again.
Sure.
How does that reconcile with the carefree attitude? Well, I don't care if it's going up or down.
I don't know. First of all, I don't really see a contradiction.
Okay.
But it's also a better question for tomorrow.
All right.
Okay? Because that's the kind of question that's the kind of question that relates directly to what we're going to talk about tomorrow anyway.
Okay.
So if you want to save it till then.
All right.
Okay. We'll just wait till John's done. Because right now we're going to talk about the nature of beliefs and get into that stuff. Since we know exactly why we're doing this, right? Everyone, we're all together on this. We know exactly why we're going to talk about beliefs. So I sure hate to talk about it when everyone doesn't know exactly why we're doing this. And have like this burning desire to get into this material. I feel this burning desire from everyone here. Let's do this now. I have yet to encounter an audience that had that burning desire to do what we're about to do. Anyway, let's do it. Okay, we're going to talk about the nature of beliefs. Interestingly enough, there probably isn't anything about that has more impact or influence over the way we experience our lives than our beliefs. And interestingly enough, if I were to say, well, let's just do an inventory. Let's just start out writing down just exactly what do you believe? Chances are your minds will go blank. And you wouldn't even be able to think of one belief. Now, then you start thinking about political beliefs and religious beliefs and things like that. But the point that I want to make is this, is that, like I said, beliefs, there isn't anything that has more of an impact on the way we experience our lives than what we've learned to believe. And yet, we don't normally go about our lives thinking about the impact of what we believe on how the way in which we experience our lives, the way in which we experience our lives. In other words, think of it this way. We weren't born with any of our beliefs, were we? Right? Did anybody think that we were born with any of our beliefs? Every single one of our beliefs were acquired in some way or another. And regardless of how they were acquired, it's like they cause us to experience our lives and the world in a way that's consistent with whatever was instilled in us. And in many cases, what was instilled in terms of what we believe was done so not at our conscious direction, and certainly not from a conscious choice. But yet, these beliefs that were instilled still have this major impact on how we live our lives, regardless of whether or not we want to live our lives that way. Because there can be a huge difference between what we learn to believe and the way we want to express ourselves. So just as a little bit of an overview, it's like beliefs have this major impact, and yet it seems like we know nothing about them. Now think about this. It seems like we know nothing about our beliefs. I don't mean any specific belief that we might have about the nature of the way the world exists or our relationship to it. I mean just about the characteristics of a belief. We know a lot about the physiology of our anatomy. We know how our eyes function and how our ears and our hands and our arms and our legs and our muscles and our internal organs. Scientists have been dissecting bodies for years. And it just seems like it's only lately that even the psychiatric community has started to focus on specific beliefs instead of personality traits or personality characteristics. Because our behavior is definitely influenced by a combination of both. And you could say that personality characteristics are, in some cases, probably genetic. In other words, our behavior is a function of both camps, meaning environment and genetics, what we've learned to believe in relationship to the kind of inherent characteristics that we were born with. Because we're definitely born with certain filters about the way we interpret information. Those are just basic filters. Some children seem to need more attention than others. That's a filter. Some children seem to be more outgoing than others. That's a filter. Some children seem to be more inquisitive than others. That's a filter. So there are some kids, for an example, that you could give every ounce of attention that you could imagine giving, and the kid that wouldn't be enough. And there are other kids you could do the same thing with, and they tell you to, get away, leave me alone. It's one of the big problems with parenting, is making those kinds of adjustments to the unique characteristics that each kid is born with. And what always kind of amazed me is how when it's kind of the first reaction of parents when they find out that their children are individuals, that they really are individuals, and that the next kid, if they have more than two, is different than the first. But that shouldn't really surprise us, right? Because how are our minds designed to think? Our minds are designed to associate. So what's going to happen is that when the second child comes out and into the world, our mind will automatically associate the second with the first, making the two identical because of the similarities, and then only to be shocked to find out that, oh, this is a different kid. In some cases, it can be completely different. Does that all make sense now? Why parents would be shocked? Because of this automatic association mechanism. And everyone also, too, keep in mind, because something I didn't say before is that is that everyone's mind has a different, let's say, toleration levels, let's say, for what's similar or dissimilar. Meaning that we can take something that's going on right now in this moment that has similar characteristics or properties than something that's in our mind. How similar it has to be to make it identical in our mind is all different based on the individual. In other words, it seems to be different tolerances for that kind of similarity or dissimilarity when the two get connected in one and the same. But I'm going to go into more detail on that in a second anyway. So what I was saying before is that beliefs have certain properties and characteristics. It doesn't really matter what the belief is. They have certain properties and characteristics. And if we're going to learn to work with our beliefs so that we can control our perception of how we perceive market information, remember that's what we want to do. We want to control our perception of information so that we no longer have the potential to perceive the up and down ticks as threatening. Then we've got to understand how they work. So we're going to get into like a mini psychology course here for the next couple of hours so that you have this kind of basic understanding of how beliefs function so that you know how to work with them. So the first thing we're going to talk about is how do they get formed? What are they and how do they get formed? Anybody got any ideas? Your experiences. Okay. Now, when we talk about experiences, what are we really talking about? Let's look at the most fundamental level, because that's what we have to do.
Just life in general, day-to-day activity.
Day-to-day activity, but look at it like when you're talking about an experience, like what is an experience? What is it?
Perception and feedback.
Well, okay, perception and feedback, but aren't we connected to the external environment? In other words, like anything inside my skin, let's say, or let's say I'm going to say inside my mental environment, can be or is different than, I'm going to make a distinction between the two. Our mental environment and the outside world. We're connected to the outside world through our five senses. I'm connected to this external environment through my eyes, my ears, my nose, sense of touch and taste. What happens, and the external environment acts as a force. So we could say, let's categorize everything outside, regardless of what it is, as a force, expressing itself. Everything outside is expressing itself. Everything in the external environment.
It's like a hot stove, you perceive it.
Okay, but see, you could say, is the hot stove, how is the hot stove expressing itself?
Well, perception.
No, think of it from the stove's perspective. How is the hot stove expressing itself?
Neutral.
No, it's not neutral. No.
But it doesn't care.
It may not care, but it's not neutral. Not neutral from our perspective anyway. How is the hot stove expressing itself?
Giving off heat.
As heat. It's energy, as heat. It's expressing itself as energy. That's what I want to get at. There's this cause and effect relationship between ourselves and the environment. In other words, what you've got is a situation where all of the external forces of nature has an infinite, basically probably an infinite combination of ways of expressing itself. You've got humans, everybody outside of ourselves, and all the different people and all the different cultures and all the different ways that people believe about the way the world exists. They will express themselves in a way that's consistent with their beliefs. So that you take nature, plants, animals, waves, air, volcanoes, whatever. Plants, animals, insects, people, and then everything man-made. Now think about this, and everything man-made, which also expresses itself, these are all external forces that can express themselves in virtually an infinite combination of ways. And there is a cause and effect relationship between ourselves and the external environment, so that we're connected to these external forces, so that these forces have an impact on our senses, and as a result, get transformed into electrical impulses of energy and stored in our mind. And let's say in the beginning, at least let's say in the case of an infant, as not just as a memory. What's the word I'm looking for? As a undifferentiated memory, you might say. So if we kind of put ourselves in the mind of an infant wouldn't have any way to categorize all these different experiences, because the way we learn to categorize experiences is through a structure we call a language, which is like this abstract symbol system.
Reference points or something?
Yeah, a language would be like a reference point. But let's say what happens with an infant is that he has all these undifferentiated memories. They're just probably floating around in his brain without any way of categorizing what they actually mean. But what happens is that, like I said, the environment acts as a force on our senses and creates, and scientists know that these experiences get transformed into electrical impulses of energy, but then what happens to them after that? They become what we call memories. Now, are these memories, do they have any particular structure? Well, we don't really know, because we can't get in the mind of an infant. But we do know that eventually they form into some sort of structure. They form into structures based on how we teach children to organize these experiences. Hold on one second. Let me decide how I want to go from here. Okay. So what we have is, when you look at a language, for an example, a language is nothing more than, like I said before, an abstract symbol system. So what we have are words, that we have letters that form into words like this. What does that mean? Now we know it has meaning because it's something that we've learned, okay? We have, let's say, now, by themselves, these letters that form into this word, and these words that we can put together into concepts, by themselves, they are virtually meaningless. They're just scratches on a piece of paper. If this were a foreign language that none of us knew how to interpret, what would it mean to us? Absolutely nothing. If they were Egyptian hieroglyphics, what would it mean to us? Absolutely nothing. But these are words that have a meaning in each one of our minds. How do those meanings occur?
Through your experience
Experiences, reference points.
or your action with
What's that? Go ahead. Being taught. Okay, yeah, exactly. In other words, someone making an association between certain environmental phenomenon, certain ways that the environment can express itself and act as a force on our senses, and associating it with these abstract letters: cold, hot, night, daylight, word. And now when the energy, now this is what's really important here, when we associate the energy of the experience with the word, it takes on a tangible reality or a tangible meaning.